Bezos and Musk are nowhere near the richest people ever. The people at the top of this list make their wealth look like pocket change. We're talking multi-trillion-dollar empires, adjusted for inflation, of course. Let's kick off our top 10 with billionaires, though. John D. Rockefeller, the original oil tycoon. Rockefeller started Standard Oil in 1870, when he quickly recognized that the oil industry, particularly refining, was a key opportunity due to the rising demand for kerosene, a major fuel source for lamps at the time. His company controlled about 90% of all the oil in the United States. That's what you call a monopoly. Rockefeller got rich by not just drilling for oil, but also refining and selling it, controlling every part of the business. Eventually, the government broke up his company because it was too powerful. But even after that, his wealth kept growing as he invested in new industries. Next, we have Andrew Carnegie. He started off as a poor immigrant from Scotland, but he made his fortune in the steel industry. He figured out how to make steel faster and cheaper, which meant cities could build skyscrapers, railroads could grow, and the economy could expand. Eventually, Carnegie sold his steel company to J.P. Morgan for a massive $480 million, which is about $372 billion today. What made Carnegie special was that he gave away almost all his money to build libraries, schools, and fund science research. He believed in giving back, famously saying, "The man who dies rich dies disgraced." Now we're moving on from the peasants into the trillions. Catherine the Great of Russia is next, with a fortune of around $1.5 trillion. Catherine ruled Russia from 1762 to 1796, a time when the Russian Empire was expanding rapidly. She's the reason Russia is so damn big. She wasn't born into Russian royalty. She was actually a German princess who married into the royal family. After her husband was overthrown, she took power and became one of the most successful rulers in Russian history. Catherine modernized Russia's economy by promoting trade, developing new towns, and encouraging Western European ideas. She expanded Russia's borders through successful wars, adding massive amounts of land rich in resources. Her wealth came not only from the land and resources she controlled, but also from her power over the Russian people, ensuring her throne stayed secure. At number 7, we have Augustus Caesar, the first emperor of Rome, with an estimated worth of $4.6 trillion. Augustus, originally known as Octavian, was the adopted son of Julius Caesar. He rose to power after defeating Mark Antony and Cleopatra, and he became Rome's first emperor, transforming the Roman Republic into the Roman Empire. Augustus controlled one of the biggest and richest empires in history, and his wealth came from various sources like taxes, farming, and owning valuable territories. One of his most important assets was Egypt, which was incredibly wealthy in terms of agriculture and resources. Augustus's power wasn't just about having gold. It was about having control over people, resources, and armies. With that kind of influence, he could shape the entire Roman world, building roads, aqueducts, and monuments, and ensuring his name would be remembered forever. His wealth allowed him to not only strengthen Rome, but also secure his position as one of history's most powerful leaders. Joseph Stalin comes in next, with a fortune estimated at $7.5 trillion. Stalin wasn't rich in the way we think of today's billionaires. He didn't really have a flashy lifestyle. Instead, through communism, he had absolute power over the Soviet Union, which was one of the largest countries in the world. As the leader of the Soviet Union, Stalin effectively owned everything within its borders: the factories, the farms, the natural resources, and even the people. His wealth came from controlling the entire economy, which included vast reserves of oil, minerals, and agricultural output. Stalin's power allowed him to industrialize the Soviet Union rapidly, making it a global superpower. His influence was so authoritarian that he could direct resources wherever he wanted, whether for building up the military, constructing infrastructure, or advancing his political goals. Empress Wu of China, one of the few female rulers in Chinese history, worked her way up from being a concubine to becoming the Empress of China, to leading an empire worth a whopping $16 trillion. Yes, she literally went from being a sex slave to a trillionaire. She was a strong and effective ruler, expanding China's borders and maintaining stability within her empire. She ruled in the 7th century during the Tang dynasty, which was incredibly prosperous during her rule, partly because of the Silk Road, which brought in huge amounts of money from trade. Wu also invested in agriculture, which boosted food production and ensured economic growth. She made sure the government ran efficiently, with taxes coming in steadily to keep the empire wealthy. Wu used her wealth to build temples, run an extensive intelligence network, and keep her enemies in check, ensuring her legacy as one of China's most powerful and wealthy rulers. At number 4, we have Akbar the Great, the ruler of the Mughal Empire. with an estimated net worth of $21 trillion. Akbar ruled over a huge part of what is now India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh, making his empire one of the richest in the world at the time. Akbar was known for his fair tax system, which helped keep the empire wealthy and prosperous. He encouraged trade, bringing in goods and wealth from across Asia and Europe, and made the Mughal Empire a center of culture, arts, and knowledge. Akbar was also a skilled military leader, expanding his empire through successful conquests, which brought in more wealth and resources. His policies promoted unity among his diverse population, allowing freedom of religion and culture. He used his wealth to build magnificent structures and create a lasting legacy of cultural richness. Emperor Shenzong of China, who ruled during the Song dynasty, had a net worth of about $30 trillion. The Song dynasty was known for having the most advanced economy of its time, with booming trade, agriculture, and technology. During Shenzong's reign, China saw a major economic boom. Shenzong invested in big projects like the Grand Canal, which helped boost trade across China by making it easier to move goods from one part of the empire to another. He invented paper money, which made trade easier and helped the economy grow even more. Yup, if you have cash in your wallet, you can thank Shenzong for that. The Song dynasty had a highly organized government that was able to collect taxes efficiently, and this revenue was used to fund public works, support the military, and encourage cultural development. In the runner-up spot, we have Genghis Khan, the famous Mongol conqueror. With an estimated worth of $120 trillion, Genghis Khan didn't have a giant pile of gold or a palace filled with treasure. Instead, his wealth came from controlling the biggest empire the world had ever seen, stretching from China all the way to Europe. The Mongol Empire under Genghis Khan was vast, and it controlled many of the world's most important trade routes, including the Silk Road. This gave him access to enormous wealth, as goods like silk, spices, and precious metals flowed through his territory. Genghis Khan's power over his vast empire gave him access to unimaginable wealth and influence. He distributed land and wealth among his generals and soldiers, ensuring their loyalty and building an empire that would last long after his death. His ability to control such a massive territory and the wealth it generated makes him one of the richest figures in history. Now, the richest person ever is Mansa Musa, the emperor of the Mali Empire, with an estimated net worth of $250 trillion. Yeah, that's right, 250 trillion. Mansa Musa ruled in the 14th century, and his empire was home to half of the world's gold reserves. Imagine having control over half of all the gold in the world. When he went on his famous pilgrimage to Mecca, he brought a caravan that was miles long, with thousands of soldiers, attendants, and camels loaded with gold. He was so generous that he gave away so much gold during his journey that it actually caused inflation in the cities he passed through, like Cairo and Medina, destabilizing their economies for years. But Musa wasn't just rich in gold. He had access to salt and other precious metals. He used his incredible wealth to build schools, libraries, and mosques, turning the Mali Empire into a center of learning and culture. He built the legendary Sankore University in Timbuktu, attracting scholars and architects from all over the Islamic world. His wealth wasn't just about material riches. It was about the legacy he left behind, a legacy of knowledge, culture, and prosperity. Mansa Musa's wealth and generosity were so legendary that they're still talked about almost 700 years later, making him truly deserving of the title of the richest person in history. And that wraps up the top 10 richest people of all time. These tycoons had more wealth than today's billionaires could ever imagine. If you found this as fascinating as we did, hit that like button and subscribe for more amazing stories from history.